Good evening, everybody. How you doing? Good evening and welcome to the 6th annual Stand Out Stigma event here at Penn State Shenango. My name is Michael Muhan. I'm a local attorney and I'm one of the members of the Board of Commissioners for the City of Hermitage, just nearby the other side of Sharon. The goal of this event is to raise awareness about issues surrounding mental health in the hopes that more people will improve their lives by seeking help when they need it. Just some brief housekeeping before we get started with tonight's program. Please put your cell phones on vibrate or silent. Restrooms are in the back of the building. Yeah, there's food here, so please help yourself. And at the end of the program, please complete the evaluation forms on your chairs and then leave them on your chairs for collection. For this year's Stamp Out Stigma, we're tackling a challenging and sensitive topic: suicide. Suicide can be a very personal topic. Some of you may be here today because you lost a loved one to suicide. Some of you may be here because you're a survivor of a suicide attempt or have had struggled with suicidal thoughts. Tonight's program may stir up some emotions, and if it does, there are individuals here today, including Penn State Shenango faculty and staff, who will be available during and after the program to talk to and process this with, so that you don't have to leave this program today with difficult and or unexpressed emotions. If you're a helper, please raise your hand. These people are kind-hearted and have an ear for you if you need one. There's also the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK, T-A-L-K, or the crisis text line at 741-741. As I've stated before, suicide can be a very personal topic, and I'm here today speaking to you because it is for me. I have lost someone very important to me to suicide, and I am a suicide survivor. A week from today, it will be 19 years since my suicide attempt. I was a junior in high school at Hickory. I was incessantly bullied and harassed for being overweight, having a general and social awkwardness, and a perception that I was gay. After my suicide attempt, which no one knew of at the time, I finished high school a completely new person despite still suffering from depression and anxiety to this day. Since my suicide attempt, I've graduated from high school, college, graduate school, law school, passed the Pennsylvania bar, became a solo practicing lawyer here in the area, married a beautiful woman, ran for elected office, and won. My story is not common. There are plenty of people who have done great things despite having suicidal thoughts and suffering from depression in their youth. I've lost also someone very close to me to suicide, and after that loss, I decided to talk about my suicide attempt and speak to young people about my journey through mental illness, suicide, and ways that young people can overcome these feelings. And I've spoken to thousands of students from 3rd grade to 12th grade all across Western Pennsylvania. Throughout my time speaking to students, the number one thing I've heard the most has been the teachers and administrative staff telling me that the kids appreciate the message coming from someone who has been in those shoes, someone who understands them, and someone who has empathy. We're all here today, and I'm here today because suicide prevention is important. It's important for those who may have lost someone to suicide in the past. It's important for those who maybe not know anybody, and as a result, they want to learn more about those who suffer from suicidal thoughts and mental illness. And they're very important. Suicide prevention and speaking out is very important for people like myself who are survivors and loss survivors as well. With that, we'd like to kick off the program, and I'd like to call up Tracy and Anna with the Mercer County Suicide Prevention Network.
Thank you. really appreciate you coming out tonight for this event. This is great to provide some community awareness, some education, some resources. So I'm glad that you made the effort to come out tonight. So I just want to say that Tracy and I are co-chairs of our local Mercer County Suicide Prevention Network. We have a table in the back, so come visit us and you can get some resources. Some of those resources I'm about to go over, but I want to let you know that our mission of our Suicide Prevention Network is to collaborate with the community to reduce the risk of suicide through education, advocacy, and support. So attending things like this, helping to host trainings, helping to do different events is part of our mission to educate people that there are resources available for mental health treatment. We have a lot of partners in our suicide prevention network. Some of them, we are from the Behavioral Health Commission, so there's some of us from behavioral health that sit around the table. We have some schools, some staff from schools that attend. We have the coroner comes when he's able to. Some of our local colleges have attend. And most importantly, we have family of suicide, of people who lost somebody to suicide, also come to the table. And we work on planning education events, resources, which we have at the back. So I encourage you to visit us. I want to point out that on your chair and also on our table, we have these resource cards. It's a simple thing to have in your wallet, in your purse, that you can pull out. On the one side, it has our local Mercer County crisis line that you call if you're having a mental health crisis, or if you need to call, you can call for your neighbor, you can call for your friend, you can call for your parent, for your sibling. You can call anybody for it. If they're having a mental health crisis, call this number. On the back has the national number that you've heard to. It has the national number as well as the text line, which is immediately answered. Also on the back, one of the things that we put together for suicide prevention is in order to provide awareness of what our community has, are these purple folders. If, back on the table, please grab one. On the inside, you'll find a crisis resource directory. It has local and some of our surrounding county crisis lines, resources, so that if somebody you know or if you need help, you can just pull this out and find your county's numbers. In it also, I want to highlight on the other side, these flyers here have some additional resources specific to different age groups. So there's one for an adult, there's one for a young adult, and there's one for an adolescent. And then on that same side, there's a multi-page resource for veterans. We also have on the back table a little card specific for veteran resources. So please come back and visit our table to get some of these resources that we have. Tracy.
Again, it's wonderful to see you all out here tonight. Briefly, I'm just going to highlight some of the training opportunities that our network can provide. We have several partners that are trained in different suicide awareness trainings. We can, if you connect with us, we have people that are facilitators for QPR, which is question, persuade, and refer. That takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours. We also can offer youth mental health first aid or adult mental health first aid. Those are longer courses, 8 hours, and that really gives you a more in-depth look at, for the adolescent, the typical adolescent development, because you need to understand typical development before you can really recognize when it starts moving into more of a crisis situation. And then also adult mental health gives you a kind of an overview of more signs and symptoms so you understand what to look for. And it's important to just have that knowledge so that you know when you're reaching out how to support that person. We also offer Talk Saves Lives. That's about an hour suicide prevention awareness training through American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Again, that's just giving you some of the skills, knowing signs and symptoms, understanding how to start a conversation. And another one that we have available through some of our partners is ACEs, so the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. That is very important to understand the underlying effects of trauma, early childhood trauma, and how that can manifest later in life as both physical and emotional struggles. So again, we're doing our part to try and offer education and training, being part of presentations such as this. We also want to invite you, our meetings are open to the public. We meet on the 4th Tuesday of every month at 9 a.m. at the Mercer County Behavioral Health Commission, so you're welcome to attend. Just pop in, you don't have to RSVP or anything like that. And that's your chance to come and be a part of our network and help reach out to the county and whatever educational programs that we kind of have developed or that there's a need. And lastly, through our network, what we do really is, no matter where we are, is we really like to encourage 3 specific action steps, because there's so many times we've had conversations either through a training or a personal conversation, it's about what can I do? And there's some very powerful steps that you can take as a person trying to support another. And so I just want to remind you that the first is to educate. So that's attend trainings, the ones that I mentioned, be a part of presentations such as tonight. Educate yourself, encourage others to attend as well. And then the other is to know the local resources. So again, we're here tonight to give you that opportunity to take home some information that you might not have already had. The other step is to advocate. So we want you to become advocates for the trainings that you see, like for tonight, to increase your participation in efforts such as the Suicide Prevention Network meeting. It's a fabulous opportunity to get more involved. And then advocate for others, for individuals who need support. We want you to be that voice to kind of help link them to the supports that we have provided you with. And lastly, communicate. So having courageous conversations such as what we're going to have tonight is really what we're about at the network, and bringing this to the forefront to our community, one individual, one conversation at a time. We want to encourage you to never hesitate. If your gut's saying that person seems like they might be struggling, you're probably right, and to simply ask them, are you okay? And just be prepared to be an authentic, true, non-judgmental listener, and that can really build the bridges to future conversations and maybe linking them to the treatment. And then just lastly, as you have these supportive conversations, please remember to just, in your conversation, remind them that treatment is available, recovery does happen, and there is always hope. So again, we have a lot of resources. This little wallet card can kind of walk you through some of the simple steps that I just discussed. So again, we're glad you're here. Maybe we'll talk to you later tonight.
Hi everyone, I'm Tony Paglia. I am a staff member here at Penn State Shenango. I want to thank all of you for coming out and spending your Wednesday evening with us. You could go to the Mercer County Band Show tonight. You're here to see a bunch of high school band members play. I see some people saying, yeah, I probably should have gone to that. My kids are there tonight, unfortunately, because it was supposed to be last week and it got rained out. So my family's there and I'm here with you. But I think this is really important and I thank you for coming. So I'm one of the co-coordinators of this event. I want to thank Mike for leading us off. I want to thank Tracy and Anna. I want to recognize a couple of people tonight. My co-organizer for Stamp Out Stigma for the last 6 years has been Mr. Jack Luchetti. Jack, stand up. Our program here at the campus began back in 2014 when Jack was a student in our Human Development and Family Studies program, and he felt this was a conversation we needed to be having as a campus with our students, faculty, and staff. And he's continued to work on it after graduation and as an alum and come back. And so we've been doing this for a good little while together, and we've elevated this to where we're able to have programs like this for the community. So thank you, Jack, for your work, and I look forward to our conversation about Stamp Out Stigma 2020 on Monday. I'd also like to recognize the Buell Regional Health Foundation. Mickey Gula and her team here in Sharon recognize the importance of our work in trying to reduce stigma, the stigma that surrounds mental health, and they've awarded a grant to us this year that allowed us to put on this program, allowed us to bring our speaker in this evening, and we are very grateful to them. So a quick round of applause for the Buell Regional Health Foundation. Anna and Tracy mentioned their table at the back, and I really hope that you'll stop by and see them on your way out. I hope you also stop by our Stamp Out Stigma table. We have some stress balls and these green Stamp Out Stigma bracelets. If you're someone who likes to wear rubber bracelets, we've got a ton of them. And I think it's just a good reminder that in our interactions with others, we need to do our best to reduce the stigma in the way we talk about these issues by encouraging people to seek help, that asking for help is not a weakness, that it is a vulnerability, but ultimately it is something that takes strength and courage and wisdom. So please stop by. Also, we have one of our Penn State Shenango students, Stephanie Catalino. Stephanie is currently working on a nonprofit organization that she's created called Finding Inner Normalcy, in which she is working to bring together individuals who are in their own mental health recovery that use the visual arts and multimedia as tools of expression and well-being. So she's doing some really cool things over at Linden Point in our East Center, and she's back there, and I hope you'll stop by and say hello to her and learn more about what she's doing. Now, I want to mention, you may have noticed that there's some note cards on the floor in the seat in front of you. If you have questions that come to you while you're listening to our keynote speaker tonight and you want to write those down, please do so, and after she's done, I'm going to come around and collect some of those, and we'll use those as kind of a jumping off point for Q&A. So please share your questions if you have them. We'd love to hear them. So I'm very excited to introduce our keynote speaker for tonight. Dese'Rae Stage is an artist, a photographer, a writer, an educator, and an activist from the other side of our great state of Pennsylvania. She's from Philadelphia, and she is the creator of the suicide prevention and awareness website, livethroughthis.org. On her website, she shares her work of the last 10 or so years, where she has been traveling across the United States and meeting with survivors of suicide attempts. And she's been documenting their stories and taking their photographs and sharing them on this website. She'll talk to you more about that. But she has done this work that has been really groundbreaking, I think really healing for a lot of people. And when I had an opportunity to see her speak last year at State College at the HESPC conference, I thought to myself, this is something that our valley, a message that our valley, people in our valley need to hear, and I think we'll be really interested in and really take a lot away from. So, for her work, she's received numerous awards. She has received coverage from the Associated Press, the New York Times, NPR, the CBS Evening News, and she's also the subject of a 2017 documentary called The S Word, and it follows the work that she's done within the survivor community. After the program tonight, if you have some time, please go over to our art gallery. This is in the next building over here, our lecture hall. On the second floor in room 222, we have our art gallery. What we've done is taken Dese'Rae's photographs with her permission, and we've created an art installation in which you walk into the gallery and you're surrounded with the faces of survivors. And all of the folks who she's interviewed are represented there. And this is an unusual kind of art exhibition because you're encouraged to take the photos down from the walls. They're all just held up with a single push pin. But when you take them down from the wall and you turn them over, what you'll find is information about that individual. And maybe you'll look at someone and something about them resonates with you, and you may want to learn more about them. You can turn the photo over and see their name, where they're from, how old they are, what they do for a living, and then there's a quote in there from their interview, which Dese'Rae posts on the website, as well as a QR code you can scan to read the whole interview. These quotes speak a lot to their experience, speaks to their experience with stigma and recovery, and I think it speaks to hope. So I hope that you'll go over and check that out, as well as your experience here with us tonight. I think what you'll see from her work is that suicide does not discriminate. It impacts people despite race, gender, religious beliefs, or socioeconomic status. If you take the time to read the interviews on her website, as I did throughout the summer as I worked on this project, you may find that your compassion for others grows by leaps and bounds, and that if this wasn't a subject that you you were really passionate about before, it may flick a switch inside you. I can tell you that I've become really fun at parties because this is something I can't stop talking about with people. And part of it is because of how I've been inspired by reading these stories of others that Dese'Rae has gone out and collected and shared in this way. So without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest speaker, Dese'Rae Stage.
Hi guys, I'm fun at parties too. Give me 1 second. Okay, can everybody hear me? Yes, good, cool. One thing, if it'll cooperate. Alright, so I'm Des, I'm fun at parties. I have 2 topics, not just one. I have suicide and infertility, so that's good. Oh, wait, I have a slide. That's me. I'm 36 years old. I'm a photographer, a writer, a suicidologist. Originally from, no, that's me. I'm originally from Miami. I've lived in a ton of places, all over Florida, Tennessee for a few years, New York City, Texas for 5 months. And now I live in Philly. I have a house there. I'm not leaving. I'm staying there. I'm a daughter. I'm a sibling. Those are my 2 jerk brothers. They're much younger than I am. I'm a former band geek, so, you know, we're all together in spirit, even though they're over there. We're here. It's good. We're represented. Former band geek, wannabe poet. Don't know if I believe in soulmates, but if they're real, I'm pretty sure I found mine. And then I married her. 2 pictures because they're good and I like them and they make me happy. I like tattoos, beer, bourbon, documentaries, true crime, memoirs, podcasts about all of those things. If you guys are into NPR's Ask Me Another, I was in last week's episode, so you can hear me lose. Cheese. I'm mad at cheese right now. You'll know what I mean if you listen. I'm a huge music fan, indie, top 40, country, Motown. You'll be surprised to hear that I love Taylor Swift and Tori Amos equally, because I'm that person. I'm also a mother of 2 amazing babies. That's Theo on the left and Gus on the right. And I'll just keep doing this because they're cute. Theo's 5 months old. This is actually my first week back to work since I had her. You know, away from them. But I guess this isn't about them, so I'll stop. But just know that, oh wait, no, know that I could do this all day. I've got that. My life is amazing. I'm doing all of this telling you about me today to know that my life is amazing. I'm happy. I have everything that I could have ever wished for, far, far beyond. But I've also had suicidal thoughts pretty consistently since I was 14. Some of them stem from mental health issues, some from just kind of life circumstances. I think suicide, like anything else in life, or more than anything else in life maybe, is really complicated, and I've seen it from a lot of angles. So that compelled me to dedicate my life to changing it when I was 16. I was wearing black then too, I don't know. So I think this is a good time to introduce you to the project via a video that I have for the next 4 minutes to entertain you. Live Through This is a series of portraits and true stories of suicide attempt survivors across the United States. So the catalyst for starting the project was personal experiences I had with depression, with self-injury, with my own suicide attempt, and I also lost friends to suicide. And I noticed that we don't talk openly about our personal experiences with suicide and with suicidal thoughts and suicidal feelings. And I just wanted to change that.
Live Through This is important because it's important for people to see that there's hope after an attempt and that there's people out there like them and they're not alone. Not feeling alone is a big deal as a human being.
If people don't understand it, this might give them a chance to see like you know, there's a human here, you know, is something I think that a lot of people maybe deal with at some point in time. And it's nice to just have some solidarity there for them and with them, you know.
A lot of suicide attempt survivors have never told the story from front to back because they've never been encouraged to. So I give them that space. And afterwards, I make a portrait.
To see people's souls within their eyes, it was amazing. To be able to create that bond that you're not alone, it could help so many others.
I've seen suicide from so many different angles, and so I understand it from an academic perspective, but more importantly, I understand it from lived experience, from a very personal perspective. So when I sit down with somebody and they tell me their story, they know that they're sitting with somebody who's been there too.
When I found the project, I thought, wow, fantastic. You know, this is a way for me to talk without somebody giving me a really strange look or trying to give me medication or trying to lock me up or telling me how wrong I was about something.
And to be able to have a conversation with someone else who's experienced that, you know, you're not going to be judged. And to be able to open up and be honest about that experience, I felt like I was like being heard with every single word.
I want people to come away understanding suicide better or wanting to understand it better. I want them to be more open to talking about it because one thing we know is that asking about suicide saves lives.
And we just need to reach out and say, we can talk about it, we can approach it, it does happen, and the more we're scared of it, the more difficult it can be for people who face it because they know they have nowhere to go. And that feeling of having nowhere to go and no one to speak with kind of makes it worse in the first place.
It connects us to our stories, not only for the stories that we're reading of other attempt survivors, but the stories that are untold within ourselves. And it gives us hope and an opportunity to know that recovery is possible.
The story's ready to be told to everybody. Get it out there. Let people see that I'm a regular human being.
When I listen to the stories of suicide attempt survivors like me, I don't hear weakness. I don't hear selfishness. I hear courage. I hear compassion. I hear resilience. I hear survival. I hear life. You know, this project is not about death. This project is about life. That's why I called it Live Through This.
The people who are on that brink, they say like, listen, like there's a whole nother side to this. There is so much love in the world still. So like, soldier on, man. You know what I mean?
Yay. So I want to normalize the conversation around suicide. That's my main goal, to show you that the experiences of suicidal thoughts and actions are tied to trauma, to adversity, to difficult life circumstances that can feel impossible to manage. And it's not always mental health differences. I think that's really important to know. And I think that just about anyone is capable of feeling this. Anyone could go down this path. So because of that, we've got to make it our mission to learn more, as we were talking about earlier. Look at it beyond the medical model, beyond the it gets better platitudes. Really see the people behind it, the complexity and the nuances so that we can change it. I'm gonna tell you my story, but because I'm a photographer, I'm gonna do it in a series of snapshots of the different ways that suicide has cropped up in my own life. The first time I ever heard the word suicide, it was Juan, the butcher at Winn-Dixie. My grandmother was the deli manager, and they were good friends. And I'm from Miami, he was a Cuban man in his 40s, really good looking. I loved him, my whole family loved him. And then he died, he took his life, and my grandmother talked about the wife and the daughter that he left behind and where he was found and how he did it. And she said, such a shame, such a shame. And I asked my mom recently, because I've always been curious about it, it's one of my earliest memories. I said, Mom, how old was I when he died? And she said, you were probably 3. So That was one. That was the first time. And then in the 90s, I'm gonna let you guys read that. The transition from middle school to high school was really hard on me. Guys, I'm gonna try and be funny. I know we're talking about some hard stuff here, but come on. That transition was really difficult. I was suddenly different from the kids around me, wearing black, listening to weird music, meeting other kids on the internet. It was when we had AOL 3.0. I started sleeping at night, or not sleeping at night, sleeping in class, failing classes for the first time. I'd always been a really good student. I even managed to fail marching band one semester. Not sure how I did that. I guess I was sitting down. I'm not sure. My relationships with my parents changed and got difficult, or I changed and got difficult. My friends were all dating. I started questioning my sexuality, getting really confused, and I was really, really, really lonely. So I experienced depression for the first time, and I had suicidal thoughts for the first time. And then all of that came together, and I started hurting myself to regulate the pain. And it was all I knew to do. It's my friend Brian on the right side. When I was in 10th grade, and Brian was in 11th grade, he took his own life. And it sent me into this spiral, because it was the first person who I had known closely who died. And I remember locking myself in my bedroom for a week and listening to sad music. And when I'd come out of my room, my grandmother, the same person who lost one all those years ago, she'd say, "Why do you care so much? That kid was selfish." And I was like, my friend's not coming back. Of course what? And all I could think of was that he felt alone and he was in pain and he didn't know how to ask for help, or he didn't feel like he could. And that all seemed very obvious to me. What she couldn't see was that I was feeling all of those things too. And I didn't think I could ask for help because I was just a kid. And whatever I was feeling couldn't compare to the adult problems that I saw all around me. And there were many. Growing up, I saw gambling problems, substance abuse, cops at 2 a.m., 72-hour mental health holds. So how could any of what I was feeling compare to that? That was kind of where I was coming from. The obligatory me as a teenager photos. I can't. So from the perspective of the 36-year-old standing here today, I don't think we give enough credence to the inner lives of young people. Every feeling when you're that age is like amped up, it's huge. Everything feels impossible because it's the first time. I think we forget that as we get older and we experience adult things. And so we invalidate young people when we really should be supporting them. I was reading one of my high school journals a few years back because I like to suffer, and I learned that I attempted suicide for the first time when I was 17 years old, 2000. And I was in the midst of one of many breakups with my first love pictured there, but I don't remember. I don't remember doing this. I don't remember this happening. And I didn't even mention the S word expressly in my journal, but what I was describing was very clearly a suicide attempt. And I don't know. I don't know why I don't remember it. I'm guessing I just didn't process it as such. Fall of 2001, we all know what happened then. I left home the day after I graduated from high school in June. I moved to Orlando for college, but as with middle school, I just didn't handle this transition very well. And 9/11 happened, and I feel like 9/11 is my generation's JFK. You know, we all pretty much knew where we were. For me, I had just failed my first college chemistry test. It was a Tuesday morning, bright blue sky. I heard the news, and I thought the world was ending. I thought it was over. I cried for weeks. I had nightmares for weeks. I was homesick, and I called my parents, and I just begged to come home. And I wanted to, I left the day after I graduated. I did not want to be there. And then, so I still wasn't sleeping. I was hurting myself. I failed every class but one that semester. I went home for winter break, and something changed. And that was when my family said, hey, we think you should see somebody. And I said, okay. So they took me to our family doctor, and he said, are you sad a lot? Do you cry a lot? Have you gained a lot of weight? Have you lost a lot of weight? All those things. And I answered his questions, and he was like, here's some medication. He didn't ask what was going on. He didn't ask anything beyond those questions. Like, he was just ticking some boxes. And that was my first diagnosis, depression. So spring of 2002 came around. I started having episodes where I would be just red with rage, and I got scared that I was going to hurt somebody who wasn't me, and I started locking myself in the bathroom. Luckily, that only lasted a couple of months and has never come back, because it was not a good time. That was when I said, oh, maybe I should see a therapist. My family, I think they don't really, or they didn't then believe in therapy. Like, they just thought you took the pill and you got better. So I had to come to this on my own. That's why it took me a while. And of course it didn't go well, because I didn't know what I was doing. No one tells you that finding a good therapist is like dating. It really is. You have to find the right one, and there are a lot of duds along the way. And it's not to say that they're bad at what they do, but people need to jive. So yeah, it went on like this for years. Sometimes I was in therapy, sometimes I wasn't, sometimes I was on meds, sometimes I wasn't, sometimes I had insurance, sometimes I didn't. My coping skills were absolutely awful, and I just didn't know what to do. I felt like a raw nerve. I think that's the best way to describe what I felt like. Then, this was a fun period. So I met this girl, and we had this whirlwind summer romance. We were in Florida, but she had to go back to school to Tennessee in the fall. And I walked away from everything to be with her. I walked away from the dream school that I had finally gotten into, from my friends, from my home state, my family. And I missed them, and I had no friends in Tennessee, and Kat was all I had. So I clung to her, and it was the beginning of this really dangerous cycle of codependence. I was waiting tables full time, and I started to have these unrelenting panic attacks. I'd be like serving drinks, crying, and my boss was understaffed, so she'd be like, you can't go home. And I worked at Bennigan's at the time. Do we have those here at any point? No? It's a Irish pub, but they're known for their potato soup. So my boss would sit me down, and she'd give me some potato soup and a glass of seltzer water, and she'd be like, eat this, drink this, you'll be better. I don't eat potato soup anymore. It didn't work. So this next part, if anyone has a history of abuse, it might get a little hard. I tried to tone it down, but just a warning. Decided to stay in Tennessee. Went back to school the next fall in Tennessee, and my relationship with Kat got more and more volatile over time. Our lives became more and more intertwined. We went to school together, we worked together, we shared a bank account, had the same friends. We were never apart. There was never any room for either of us. We never left each other's side. One day she threatened to hit me, but she didn't hit me that day. Another day she pushed me. Later she started to hit me in places where the bruising would be covered by my clothing. And then one day we were screaming at each other, and she punched me right in the face and knocked me out. And left me with a black eye, and again we worked together, so I had to go to work with my face looking like that, and people knew exactly what had happened, and I didn't know what to say because I was afraid that it would happen again if I said anything. And then in the middle of all of that, I started hitting back. And that made me question everything about who I was, even beyond this experience of being suicidal over and over and over in my life. That is the scariest thing, and the thing I feel most shameful about, I think. The other thing is, I'd seen this before in my life, and I swore that it would never happen to me. I was like, well, I'm gay, this can't happen, this is a straight people problem. It's not. So I gave ultimatum after ultimatum, and I was like, we shouldn't be doing this, we love each other. People who love each other can fix anything. That's what the Beatles told us. All you need is love. They lied. Love is not all you need. So I fell further and further into this deep, dark hole. Depressed, not sleeping still. Now I don't sleep, but a different reason. I was working full-time, going to school full-time too, and I lived in fear of the next argument, like I mentioned earlier. I was terrified she was going to leave me though, but I couldn't fathom being alone. I was cutting myself more, and the suicidal thoughts became an everyday occurrence instead of just a sometimes occurrence. I moved forward, but I couldn't see past the day that I was living in. And that was scary. So I bought a car. I was like, well, I will fix this problem of us hurting each other by leaving when we get into arguments. And then the car became a weapon, and I started thinking about ways that I could use the car to die. Somewhere in the middle of this mess, I found the amazing therapist, finally. And I think she probably kept me alive, and she also encouraged me to go see a psychiatrist for the first time. And that's when I got my second diagnosis of bipolar disorder at 21. Got new meds to add to the old ones, and none of it lasted long because it was a university counseling center. And at that university, we had a max of 8 sessions with our counselor for the whole 4 years of undergrad. That was really, really hard to say goodbye to that therapist when I needed her the most. So in the summer of 2006, after I graduated, I learned that Kat was cheating on me, and everything unraveled, even more than it had been. So I attempted suicide again. And at that point, I had been pretty consistently suicidal for about 2 years. That night, Kat was elsewhere. She wouldn't come home, but she did call the cops for a welfare check. And they barged into my apartment, screaming and yelling, "Who are you? What have you done?" And I was afraid. I was really afraid of being locked up, so much so that I couldn't speak. And when you're scared like that, they felt 10 foot tall, and I felt this big, and I just didn't know what to do. So I called my mom, and I just gave her the phone. And she gave them all my information, and then she got back on the phone with me, and she said, "Look, you're going to the hospital tonight. You do not have a choice. You have one choice that you can make, though, and your choice is, are you going to go voluntarily or are you not? Because if you don't go voluntarily, they're going to handcuff you." So I went voluntarily. I rode in an ambulance to the hospital, and no one talked to me. I was completely alone. And then a few weeks later, I got a $1,500 bill for that nice ambulance ride, which made me feel hopeless all over again, because how was I going to pay for that? Then I spent a few hours alone in this cold beige hospital room. Texts were still 25 cents each. Do you guys remember that? I don't know what we would do now if texts were 25 cents. I barely had reception, so I was alone with my thoughts. And I realized, I was like, I gotta stop hurting myself. And that means cutting. That means leaving this relationship. That means maybe leaving this town. Finding a way out of these obsessive thoughts. Because if I didn't, I would die. That hospital experience was really scary for me, but I feel lucky that it was brief. I've heard a lot worse than what I went through that night. And it's really disheartening, I think, that people who need help are humiliated like I was, treated with resentment like I was, forcibly restrained sometimes. And by people who are supposed to help us. Maybe I didn't want to go that night, but when I got there, I thought that someone was going to help me. So I'm just going to put that there for a second. Based on the quality of care I received that night, I feel extra lucky that I wasn't locked in a psych ward, because this is what I walked away with. A description of depression, something I was very familiar with, and a description of abrasions, also familiar. And then on the second page, the very bottom, my follow-up instructions, maybe 6-point font. Follow up in 1 day at 000000000. Have you guys called that phone number before? It doesn't work. So that was rough. It was the kindness of people who love me that got me through that experience, more than anything. It was my mom making sure I had a ride home. She was in Florida, I was in Tennessee. She figured it out. She called my friend Allison, who was at a party, and she was decidedly not sober. Allison got a friend who I didn't know to drive her to the hospital to come get me. The next day, my best friend wired me enough money to leave. She said, come to Texas where I am, I will take care of you. She was 23 and owned a house, a very responsible person. It took me until 35 to own a house. No, 33, still. So I did that. I quit my job, I worked out the week, I packed my stuff in my car, and I drove 1,000 miles to get to my best friend in Texas, and she took care of me for the next month while I started to rebuild my life. That's Kat, the best friend, not the girlfriend, inconvenient namings. So I moved back to Miami briefly. I went to school, I went back to school for another 5 whole minutes. That didn't work out. I grieved my breakup. One of my best friends died from suicide at that point as well. I grieved him. I was 5 minutes from my family. I never went to see them. And I made a lot of reckless decisions. And one of those reckless decisions was to move to New York City with $1,000 and all I could fit in my car, to a room in an apartment I'd never seen, with 3 roommates I'd never met beyond talking to them on the phone, that was actually not in New York City at all, but across the Hudson River in New Jersey. So, New York. When I got there, I had no friends, same as Tennessee, but I did have a camera. And I was lonely, depressed, grieving, broke, unemployed. $1,000 does not get you anywhere in New York. Like, I don't know how I stayed there. I picked up photography as a hobby when I was in Tennessee, and that camera in New York became my lifeline. I took it everywhere with me, and I had one rule, and it was that I had to shoot everything in manual mode so that I could kind of teach myself day by day by experimenting, and that's how I coped with everything that was hurting me. The suicidal thoughts came and went. They didn't stay, luckily. And mostly I didn't cut myself, but sometimes I did. And then I would start over anew and try to forgive myself for the slip up, because when you've got that kind of, I don't want to say it's addictive, but it's got addictive qualities. When you have that kind of coping skill for 9 years, it's hard to stop it because it worked. I think that's what makes cutting so scary to people. Being able to take your emotional pain and make it physical, for me, it made me feel less crazy. So that's why it worked. But breaking myself of that was a very long, hard process. I got a job at a record label licensing music videos, which is about as glamorous as it sounds. Really boring. I started sneaking my camera into concerts at night. So I started doing these sorts of things. Photographing concerts is hard. There are rules. You get 3 songs with no flash. So your camera kind of has to be an extension of who you are. You have to make decisions really quickly, build an intuition. And my work finally got good enough that I was getting assignments from music blogs. So I no longer needed to shove my lenses into my cleavage and then sneak my camera in and be like, okay. That was a thing. I almost got kicked out of a few shows because of that. And eventually I started doing interviews as well. I'm a music geek, so I'm photographing and interviewing some of my heroes. I did that for a few years and I was like, this is really amazing, but it's the experience. Like, I'm not leaving a legacy. I'm not leaving anything behind beyond pictures of musicians that may look cool. I just wanted to be contributing something of worth because that was what I told myself I'd do when I was younger. I studied psychology as an undergrad, and my goal was to be a suicide researcher and a clinician. I got trained in ASSIST and QPR, volunteered briefly at a crisis center. So when everything fell apart, I was devastated. I didn't know what to do with my future. So all of these years later, after developing these skills, I was like, I can do something with this. I can work with this. All I had to do was take the knowledge that I had, the academic knowledge, and apply it to art. And what I was noticing was an absolute absence of stories like mine, stories of attempt survivors. I thought this was funny, but no one thought it was funny earlier. there were statistics, but there were no people. All I saw were numbers. And my thing about the numbers that we throw out there about suicide are that they might not even be accurate. We talk about gender, women attempt suicide 3 times more than men, men die by suicide 4 times more than women. But for a lot of people, gender is not a binary, so we're losing a lot of people in the middle when we use numbers like that. And then a lot of people don't report their suicide attempts. A lot of suicide deaths are not reported accurately as suicide, so we're not even capturing everything that we need to. I think the numbers that we have, like, the numbers are worse than we think they are. On top of the fact, suicide manifests itself differently for all different kinds of people, racial, ethnic, cultural backgrounds. So all of these issues were at play, and what I was seeing was we had no faces, we had no names, and no stories to connect to, and I thought that was a problem. So in 2010, I was like, I'm gonna do this thing and hope it goes well. I was just like, I'm gonna shine a light on these people whose voices deserve to be heard. I'm gonna ask attempt survivors about their stories, and then I'm gonna take a picture. And I called it Live Through This, because that's what we did, and it's what we do. Took a while to find people to take a chance on this idea with me. It took about a year. I didn't know how to find people, and then I would tell them about it, and they'd be like, I don't think so. But finally, it happened. So I really like to hear about process. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my process. When I sit down with an attempt survivor, my prompt is, tell me your name, how old you are, what you do, and your story as you see fit to tell it. I'm giving them a neutral platform to say whatever it is they need to say about their experiences, and that could be what led up to their attempt, what happened after, what it feels like to be suicidal, how they survive, how they still struggle. And they're in control of their narrative the whole time, which is really important to me. I want them to share only what feels safe. Like I mentioned earlier, as attempt survivors, we can be put in these positions where our autonomy is taken away from us, where we lose power and people make decisions for us without consulting us. And that can be really painful and lead to more trauma. So when they're with me, at the very least, I'm gonna make sure that they're safe and that they have the power that they need. So I listen and I hold space, because many of these survivors are telling their story for the first time. And to a stranger, usually all they know about me when we meet is that I've been there too. And then I'm not gonna judge them. I think this probably doesn't sound groundbreaking, but for so many of us, being able to talk about it at all is new. It's still new to me, even though I'm constantly running my mouth about it. Because we spent so many years in the shame closet, so many of us, we were told to set it down, let it go, buck up, as we heard earlier, get over it. We're selfish and lazy and weak. All of these things that people say to you. You have so much to live for. So being able to acknowledge it and own it without feeling judged is pretty huge. It can lift a really huge weight off the shoulders. Instead of talking to you anymore about the interview, I'm just gonna take you into a room with me. So this is an interview I did in the summer of 2017.
For me, I am traditionally usually a pessimist. But I believe there's a small place in my head and my heart that hope resides. I don't feed it very often. I don't take very good care of it, I don't think. But it's always there. And even on my worst days, even in my most difficult situations, that little bit of hope to grasp onto, even if you can only hold it for a second, is essential. And I believe that most people have that. If
you look hard enough, and if you focus on it, there's always one thing, one moment, one thought, one feeling, a smell, a taste that triggers that hope. For me, I've got lots of different things that trigger hope now. My son's laugh. From the time he was very little, his laugh has saved me so many times. The smell of sea air, like when you're out on a boat. The taste of fresh fried bread, like right out of the fryer. It's still hot, you practically burn your mouth off, but that taste. All of those little things that you find pleasure in, those are your connections to hope. Don't ignore them. Don't sweep them away. Don't dismiss them, even when you're at your lowest. 'Cause that's you. That's some part of you wanting to survive. That's some part of you wanting to be there. Because if you can find pleasure in these things, then there is something that you like about your life. There is something to be here for. There's something to hold on to. And it might not be much, but sometimes all you need is a small something.
Aren't these people amazing? I love them. So when we do, everyone was sobbing when she was done with saying all that. When we do these interviews, we usually talk for about an hour, sometimes more. Sometimes we'll ask clarifying questions, see what they think about a certain topic, if it's relevant. But generally it's pretty unstructured. So after that, I make a portrait. I take them outdoors. I ask them to look into the lens. The idea is I want the viewer to look into their eyes as close as possible for something you're doing on the internet or on a wall in a gallery, because we've always looked away from suicide, the people it affects, be it lost survivors or attempt survivors. We've never been good at making eye contact with that. So that's kind of my idea, is let's confront this. I take them outside for a reason too. Briefly, this is Nicole. She's the first person I ever interviewed for the project. And I thought in the beginning, well, let me put them on this nice black background, and you see the lights, like you can see the glint in her eye and on her hair, and I was like, it's gonna be glossy studio stuff. And then I went, oh, they're on a black background. That could be seen as morbid, and I'm not here to sensationalize this. I just don't want to do that. So I took them off the black background because, like I said, this project is about life. I don't need any more moody, sensationalistic narratives. So now I put them in the world that they try to take themselves out of. And you'll only know that because I'm telling you that. But when you look at the portraits, knowing that, it's pretty, I think it's amazing. I love it. And all of these portraits are like time capsules of a day when they chose to stay, which is pretty cool. Let's see. Oh, I don't screen people for the project, so they usually find me. And if they're willing to show up, I'm willing to show up and listen. I'm not looking for a specific kind of story. I want to hear every story. The only rules I have are that the person has to be over 18. And they have to be willing to use their full name and likeness. They have to be at least a year out from their most recent attempt, just to give it some space. And they have to be okay with it all going on the website. Because the project's home is online, there are so few resources out there for us that I wanted to create something that anybody could access for free at any time. I think accessibility is really important, especially with resources in general being so hard to come by. So when you type in the URL, you're presented with this and then this giant grid of people who are different in so many ways, but they are all connected by their experiences with suicide and what happened after. This project is the only one in existence where stories like this are displayed in such large volume, in such depth, and not a single one of them is anonymous. Depending on what story you look at, depending on what story you pull up, it might be really short, and if it's really short, that indicates that it's really old, and if it's really long, that means that it's new, because as time passed and as I saw that people were more interested in reading these stories, I just started to include almost the whole interview. So some of them are like 30 pages long. In 2013, I put together this Kickstarter campaign because I wanted to take the project on the road. I wanted to collect as many different kinds of stories as possible. And in 30 days, I raised $23,000, which was like $7,000 more than I asked for. Do you guys know about Kickstarter? Do you know what it is? Who doesn't? Do I need to explain it? Briefly, Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform. You have to set a goal, a cash goal, and say, here's what I want to do, and then people get behind it or don't. But if you don't make the amount of money that you set out to make, you don't get any of it. But the cool thing about it is that people can give as little as $1, and the more people that get involved, the better chance you have of actually making it. So I really love crowdfunding. Let's see, what's next? So it's still the case that the project runs on funds from supporters. It's not saying a ton, but I can keep the site running from monthly donations and profits I make on t-shirts and pins. I'm going to show you the t-shirts, but only because they're all designed for survivors. The Stay shirt specifically, I've seen lost survivors wear it, attempt survivors, allies. It's really fun to see those shirts out in the world because people will ask about it. They're like, what's that shirt mean? And then it gives them the opportunity to talk about it, and that's what this is all about. Let's see. Also, I did get one grant, which was really cool, from the skincare brand Philosophy. They donate 1% of their profits to mental health initiatives that benefit women. I got $51,000 to build 4 new big media packages of women. So that's why I went to Alaska to interview Lagamas, and DC to interview Taylor and some other folks. And that was really nice. I'm actually going to skip past these, but if you guys want to read these later, I can put them online or something. I've interviewed, this is, do you guys know the poet Anne Sexton? This is her daughter. So when I met her, the grant, the funders wanted an older woman in her 60s or beyond. So I got in touch with her, and I got to see her mom's Pulitzer. Her mom died by suicide, so that was an interesting dynamic to hear about. But I photographed 186 people across the country in 36 cities, from Florida, Alaska, almost everywhere in between. The middle needs a little help, but I'm working on it. And I'm still going. I've taken a couple years off of interviewing, but in 2020 it's back on. Their ages range from 19 to 69. They come from all walks of life, all different kinds of professions. Here's a little breakdown of race and ethnicity. In the beginning, it was white women, almost completely, and then as time has gone on, it's kind of started to reach the national averages. And then we've got a little bit of gender identity stuff, 25% LGBTQ, I think it's 23% people of color. So I'm starting to get kind of a little more diversity, which I really wanted. Let's see. So when I started this project, I couldn't articulate exactly what it was that I was looking for. I just knew that I needed to speak up, and I was tired of being quiet. And it turned out I was looking for a community. I needed to know that there were people out there who understood, and obviously there are. By the end of every interview, it's really interesting because we start in this dark place, but by the end we're laughing. And I've got a new friend, someone I really care for, and so I've got that community. And then about 3 years into the project, someone said, hey, why are you keeping us all from each other? He didn't say it like that, but he was like, you should connect us. So now there's a secret Facebook group where almost everyone who's been in the project can talk to each other, which has been really nice. So let's see, themes, major themes that come up. Treatment is a major theme, and I'm doing a lot of research with different researchers right now, but this is one thing that we just had published recently. I worked with the Joyner Lab at FSU. Thomas Joyner is one of the leading suicide researchers in the country, and we wanted to look at attempt survivor experiences with mental health services. We used the first 96 narratives in the project, not including mine, and 94% of those people said, I have made use of mental health care at some point in my life. And that tells us that we need to push for more of this. More mental health care providers, more providers in general need to know about suicide crisis care and management. I'm going to come back to this later, but we found some things, some keys to positive experiences. You need to have strong therapeutic alliance, so the dating needs to go well. You need to have therapy that encourages development of new perspectives, and we've got to have supports. And then negative experiences are bad dating, bad rapport, infrastructure related, lack of access to care, forced treatment. But the last piece is that access to care is still really hard to come by. Either there are long waiting lists or someone doesn't take insurance, and even the sliding scale can be expensive. I remember when I was on sliding scale, I was trying to go to my therapist twice a week, and it was $60 a session at the lowest. It just, that's not feasible it wasn't feasible for me, it's not feasible for a lot of us. And then the other thing that I noticed is that suicidal thoughts persist over time. They come back. So the interview is unstructured, but I asked 2 questions of people. I asked them, is suicide still an option for you? What I noticed when I was doing my research before I started the project was that of the stories that were out there, there's kind of like a standard arc, and it was something bad happened. The person attempted suicide, they sought help, and then they were better forever. And that was not the case in my life, and I didn't really believe that it was going to be the case in other people's lives. So that's why I asked that question. So the answer that I'm given by, if we're making up statistics, and I am today, I would be willing to bet that about 90% of people say it is an option for me, but I don't want it to be. And I think that's really important. I think that's more of an honest picture of the experience, that these thoughts come in waves, like grief, or like joy, or like life. And ideally, you find ways to cope. You find the things that you love that make you want to get through another day. Maybe you find treatment, maybe you find meds that work, maybe you find yoga, I don't know, but something, anything. And you're constantly working on it. And to me, we talk about hope a lot, and I think hope lies with the beholder. You get to define what hope is for you. And I think that's more hopeful, to know the truth, that it's gonna come back, and that when it does come back, I know how to kick its ass. Let's see, I might skip this part. No. So I read this quote recently: suicidality exists on a continuum, and we're all on that continuum somewhere. I think that's really important, because sometimes we hear the word suicide and we're like, oh my God, call somebody right now. But sometimes a suicidal thought passes like the wind. Like, I can't tell you how many times when I lived in New York, I'd be sitting on the bus and I'd be like, I shouldn't be here. And then it was gone. And then there are other times where I'm in crisis mode. So I think that kind of indicates that we've got to learn how to talk about this, to ask the proper questions, like, okay, what does it mean when you're saying that you're thinking about suicide? And to be able to have to start to have those conversations that these trainings teach us how to have. One of the other themes is growth. So that second question that I ask people in the interviews is, what good things have come from your experiences with suicide? We tend to only talk about the negative aspects of suicide, rightfully so, but I wanted to know about what good comes from these experiences. And the answer, again, almost always is, the good thing that came from these experiences is that I know how to help other people now, and I understand them better. So I want to show you how Ashley Lofton answered that question. There is going to be a siren at some point. Are we working the volume? Okay. I don't want you guys to be surprised by that. Okay, so here's Ashley Lofton.
Well, I think that there have been a lot of benefits. There have been a lot. And namely, it's had to do with other people. It's had to do with knowing what to do in situations that other people don't know what to do. And I have an anecdote. Do you want to hear my anecdote?
Yeah.
My anecdote is when I believe I was a senior in college. My roommate and I went into a Taco Bell, and there was a girl sitting in the booth, all these people crowded around her, breathing fast, shaking, thinks she's having a heart attack, and she's like my age. Not that it's not possible, but I'm looking at it, and I'm like, all right, I am in the line with my roommate, I keep looking back, and I see all these people crowding around her, and I'm like, I think I know what's happening, I think I can help. And I keep looking back, and finally my roommate is like, if you think you can help, go over there, I walk over there, and this is not something I usually do because I'm not a big people person so much. Like, I like talking one-on-one, but there was a crowd of people over there. I went over there, and I just suddenly felt very in control of the situation. And I was like, do any of you know her? No one knew her. So I was like, okay, back away. Like, stand back there, let her breathe, get away from her, and I sat across from her, and I took both of her hands in mine, and I asked her what her name was, and she told me it was Hannah, which I remember, and I was like, Hannah, I'm Ashley, and then I started describing her symptoms to her, and she kept nodding, and I was like, okay. Like, I wasn't a medical expert, but I was like, I believe that you're having a panic attack. And her friend was outside calling an ambulance, so if it wasn't that, I felt like okay to tell her this. I was like, I believe that you're having a panic attack. So I'm going to sit here, and you're going to breathe with me. And I sat and I breathed in really deeply and out really deeply, and I spoke to her very softly. And once I felt like I could feel her heart in her hands, I felt like her heart rate was down. I asked her, okay, what's going on, And she was afraid she was going to lose her job. Like, something had happened and she was afraid she was going to lose her job. So I just sat and I talked to her, and 15 minutes go by, and by the end of it, she's laughing with me, and her friend comes in, the ambulance had pulled up, and she's laughing with me. And I don't know, like, it was just this moment, like, of clarity. I felt, like, very emotional afterward, because it was this moment of clarity, like, all of this makes so much sense right now. Like, all of the stuff that I've been through before makes so much sense, because, I mean, I'm sure she would have been fine if I hadn't been there, but what were the odds that I walked in there at that exact moment and that I could do that? And no one else knew what was going on, and they were crowding around her, and they were doing all of the things that I know that I would have hated, And it was, I don't know, it was just one of those moments that I felt like it all made so much sense. And I was grateful that I had had the experiences that I had had.
That song you guys keep hearing is called Redeemed by Charlotte Martin. I think it really speaks to this experience. I love it so much, I got her to write the word out, and I got it tattooed on my arm. In case you were wondering, because I'm like pounding it into your head. So impact. One of the things that I was able to do with the grant that I got was redesign the website. And when I did that, I decided I wanted to know more about the people who were using the site. So I built in a survey, and in 2018, 576 people participated in it. So we analyzed that data to see what are we going to learn? That was a quote that I found that really touched me. One of the important things we learned was that participants had really strong connections to mental health and suicide because of lived experiences rather than professional experiences. I kind of thought that there would be more clinicians, maybe researchers looking at the website. But it turns out that 84% of the people who look at the website had experienced suicidal thoughts. And half of them almost were suicide attempt survivors. And then all of the qualitative data was supporting that too. We have a lot of quotes that look like this. Additionally, one of the really nice things too is that loss survivors and support folks are looking at the site too to learn, like, what do I do? What do these stories look like? How can I help? And when it comes to mental health professionals, it was only 7.5%. So the community is actually using this as a resource. 35% of the people who took that survey, so that doesn't even capture everybody who's looking at the site, but 35% of those people were suicidal when they found it, and they found it helpful. So sharing those resources, because I have the resources all over the website, sharing those resources, like if you don't have these phone numbers in your phone yet, you should put them there and memorize them, like have them. I can recite 741-741 in my sleep and 800-273-TALK. Those should be there for everybody. So yeah, let's see. Live Through This has opened the door for other work that has allowed me to have an impact far beyond what I could have hoped for with this project. One of the things I've worked a lot on is reporting recommendations for journalists. So how do journalists tell stories about suicide? How can they craft a meaningful story that's not sensationalistic or gory? What information do we include? What do we leave out? Proper language usage. Over the years, I've actually seen a change. If you were to go look at stories from when Robin Williams died, you'd see a lot of different things that you're not going to see in stories about, say, Anthony Bourdain's death. It's like night and day. Another one of the things I've been able to work on is Dear Evan Hanson is a Broadway play that's really big right now. There's a character who dies by suicide, and the actor called me and he said, how do I tell this story in a way that feels true? And more on the actual, the journalism stuff. This book that came out recently,
What Made Maddie Run, is about Madison Hollerman. She died at UPenn a few years back. And Kate Fagan, the author, wrote this beautiful piece for ESPN. Beautiful, beautiful, long form, artsy, and it broke every reporting guideline. And it made me so angry. It was beautiful and I hated it. And I started yelling about it on Twitter, and she responded and she said, well, why don't we just have a conversation about it? And so in the back of that book, there's a whole chapter about this conversation that we had about how to write better stories. Then we've got, people are using this as a tool. Therapists are sharing it with their clients, which is doing research, different kinds of things at this point. One of the things that people don't really think about when it comes to research is you want to include the people you're asking questions about in your research team. You want to have them help you guide your questioning. They can course correct if things get a little strange. I look at manuscripts, so I'm looking at stuff not only
about suicide attempt survivors and people with lived experience, but I'll catch things like gender stuff, sexuality stuff, things that we miss. So it's nice to pull people in when you can, and I've been really grateful that the researchers are interested in doing that with me. What else? We're using the narratives. I also help them recruit. So if they're like, hey, I want to do a study about attempt survivors, can you help me? I'm like, yes, I know hundreds. And then what else? Oh, my favorite thing is that educators, they're teaching future clinicians. I can't remember now if I mentioned earlier, but the people we're expecting to be our mental health experts, our suicide experts, when we go to get therapy, a lot of them don't have training. in suicide crisis management, which to me, I don't understand it, but it is happening. So the fact that there are educators out there picking this up and saying, okay, let me take this to my future clinicians, my class of future clinicians, and show them what these real life experiences are like, is really fulfilling, because it means that we, like ourselves, are educating the people. So ideally, they're going to go out into the world and help us in the ways that we need and want to be helped. Most recently, I started this project. It's pretty ridiculous, as you can see. There's a unicorn involved. It's a podcast called Suicide and Stuff, and my goal in creating this art and my goal with this project is to have conversations about suicide that are normal, that we could be talking about suicide in one moment and then what we did yesterday the next moment, and just back and forth really fluidly. I'm doing it with my friend Jess Stolman-Rainey, who is also an attempt survivor and someone in the field. She runs the peer crisis line in Denver. And so that's fun. We talked, the first 2 episodes are about how Suicide Prevention Month can be really hard on people who work in the field, and it causes burnout, and what do we do about that? And then we've got some upcoming episodes about suicide in film and TV. We've got one about suicide and spirituality. Then we've got some with researchers. So we're going from really informal to formal and back and forth again. We do it live on Facebook, and then I archive the episodes on YouTube. So, all these fun things. I've been doing this for nearly 10 years. It's extremely rewarding. I love what I do. I cannot, however, say that I'm cured of these suicidal thoughts. They are still in me. So, snapshots from the past few years. Let's see. In 2012 was a great year for me. No, wait, just kidding. Where's that slide? Anyway, in 2012, I got divorced from my first wife. I was one of the first gay people to get divorced in New York, but I was also one of the first gay people to get married in New York, so I've got that going for me. And then in 2013, Cosmo said, hey, will you write about this for us? And I said, of course, because the paycheck was huge. How was I going to say no to that? I got to go to Cambodia on that paycheck. But in writing about it, in reliving all of those terrible things, I re-traumatized myself. So I had a really bad time that summer, but I had a great therapist who got me through it. And my current wife got me through it too. In the summer of 2015, I witnessed the immediate aftermath of a public suicide. Everything felt futile for months after that. It didn't necessarily make me feel suicidal, but I definitely questioned my work and its worth and whether any of us could do anything. It was really tough. I got over it. In 2017, my wife and I decided to start building our family. Before we even started trying, we planned for the inevitable. It was like, okay, well, you've got all these issues that you've had in the past, so PPD is likely. And I just really, I knew in my heart that I was gonna get postpartum depression. So we planned for that. We got everything set up, support systems, all kinds of stuff. And then we started trying and found out that not one of us was infertile, but both of us were infertile. Fel luckily got pregnant on her first IVF cycle, so she had Gus, and I was not so lucky. For me, it was 4 cycles of IUI, so that's artificial insemination, and then 5 IVF cycles. When they talk about IVF in the media, it's usually like, oh, just do IVF, you'll get pregnant immediately. No, not at all. I had a chemical pregnancy, which is you lose a pregnancy before it even shows up on an ultrasound, and then I had a miscarriage about a week after Gus was born. That was a really rough time. But then finally, last summer, my embryo stuck. Number 2 was our winner. That's Theo now, and she tortured me while I was pregnant. I thought that I was gonna get postpartum. Somehow, I figured I would be immune to depression during pregnancy. That was not the case. I got very depressed and I had some suicidal thoughts, and that felt scary, because for once it wasn't just me. It's always the people around you, but I had another human in me who didn't have that choice to make, and that made me feel really trapped. That was scary. Luckily, the cure for pregnancy is giving birth, so that's over. And Theo is an amazing baby. But I got through it. I got through all of it. I know that these thoughts will always find a way in, and I'm pretty sure that I can always get them out. And so my goal in telling you all of these things was to show that it's not just mental illness. Any number of things, like infertility wasn't a mental illness, and it still had this effect on me. But then the CDC came out with this thing last year where they said that 54% of Americans who died by suicide between 1999 and 2016 did not have mental health diagnoses. All of these other things came into play in addition to mental health diagnoses. Relationship problems, breakups are huge. Financial crises, loss of housing, physical health. We see that a lot with older people who die by suicide. Jobs. So I'm trying to hit this idea home that it's not just mental health, because I want people to look at everything. I want people to see, like, life is hard for someone I care about, and so now it's time for me to ask, and now it's time for me to rally. So I'm not trying to fight against mental illness. It's really complicated. So for me, regardless of the genesis of my suicidal thoughts, I've got tools in my toolbox that I didn't have before. All these beautiful gray hairs were hard won, and I know my mind and my body better as the years go by. Like, I love aging because I'm like, all right, well, at least I'm gonna get a little wiser and I'm gonna know how to deal with stuff a little better. I have a safety plan. I have a community. I'm really lucky. I know 1 million social workers, 1 million psychologists, all the crisis people. So I have all of this in place. I have people to turn to. I finally found a team of professionals who help me and respect me, which is nice. They helped me figure out that my bipolar diagnosis was not real, that I spent over a decade with this wrong diagnosis, believing these things that people were telling me, that I'd be sick for the rest of my life, that I'd be forced to be on medications for the rest of my life, that maybe I couldn't really hold a job like normal people. Turns out I just have depression and a really paralyzing case of anxiety, and somehow we miss that. And I get angry about it because I'm like, how different could my life have been if we weren't focusing on these diagnoses and we were trying to figure out the causes and deal with the symptoms. I'm almost done. This part's hard for me too. I knew that someday we would lose someone in the Live Through This family. It's just a reality of this work. I knew that the more I talked to people who were all at higher risk for suicide, there was a higher likelihood that we would lose somebody. And Natalie Medina was the first person we lost. I interviewed her in Eugene, Oregon in 2014, and we had this immediate connection. I just loved her. She went through a lot. She became a really vocal advocate after doing her interview. She was on the front page of her local newspaper. We lost her in the summer of 2016. And I had thought, I'd thought that I would have to stop doing this work when that day came, because I definitely thought about it beforehand. I thought I wouldn't be able to do it anymore, but Natalie, she made sure that I knew that these stories needed to be shared, so the opposite actually happened when she died, as opposed to that after I witnessed that suicide. The opposite happened. I felt more resolve to do this work, to make sure that our voices are heard. We lost Bob last year. And we also lost Heidi last year. Heidi was a really vocal advocate in Philly. And about 2 weeks ago, we lost Stella. So these losses are not failures on the parts of the people who died. I think knowing all of them as I did, every one of them survived really intense trauma for years and years, and they did what they were supposed to, and still their pain was too great. And when Stella told me her story, she said, I don't think humans are supposed to have that much struggle. I don't know if it's genetic, if it's nature or nurture, but I've been around long enough to know that enough of us do. And with the exponential increase in the incidence in suicide, especially with our young people in this nation, it abhors me that so little is being done about it. And I think that she is right. What we've been doing isn't enough, and it's not working. So there are things, and we were talking about this earlier, there are things we can do to change that. Did I make a slide about this? Yes. We can get training. There are tons of trainings out there. There's QPR, Assist, Emotional CPR. QPR, you can go online and pay $30 to get a quick QPR course, and that can start the education. You can volunteer. There are crisis centers everywhere that need volunteers, that need help. Crisis text line too is a good one. You can do that from home, and they want 4 hours a week, I believe, and they will also give you these trainings. All of these crisis centers, they'll give you the training too. You can donate. I donate every year to organizations that I care about. One of my big ones is the American Association of Suicidality. It's a mouthful, but that's where a lot of the researchers go. But they also include attempt survivors, loss survivors, crisis people. They put everyone in a room and they're like, go to town. And that's good and bad. I donate to 6 Feet Over, which is a local organization. Katie Hardy was on one of the videos earlier. They're out of Detroit, and they help families of lost survivors with their costs after someone dies. So a lot of people don't know that sometimes you have to pay for cleanup after a death, funeral costs, all of that. So that organization will help families with that, which I think is really incredible. Call your representatives, yell at them. I like to yell at them at night. Tell them they need to do something. I'm actually on Friday, for the first time, I get to go to Capitol Hill and talk to people. Do you guys know Representative Wild, Susan Wild? She's from Pennsylvania. She just lost her partner in May, and now she's taken up suicide prevention. So I'm gonna do a roundtable with her. Speaker Pelosi's gonna be there. Several other people from Pennsylvania. I'm really excited about that, and also terrified because I gotta sound smart. So yeah, do all of these things. Say the S word though. I mean, if anything, just say the S word. Don't be afraid of it. There's a quote, run toward your fear, which is what I always do because I hate public speaking. I'm afraid of it. So run toward your fear, lean into it, say the S word, because this knowledge is power, and I think that this knowledge can save lives. I've got one more ask. My ask is that you go back into the world today and you examine your attitudes about people with lived experience. I know that we all believe different things about who is affected by this. If you haven't been there, if you haven't had these experiences, can you empathize with it, even if you can't understand, even if you've had the thought of like, oh, well, that's selfish, or I'd never do that to my kids. Can you put yourself in that other person's shoes and try to see why they might be in so much pain? They'd be willing to leave. Have you dismissed this as an attention-seeking behavior? Can you poke holes in these beliefs? You know, can you edit them in the same ways that especially lately with identity politics, we're thinking about racism, we're thinking about misogyny, ableism, and I mean, for me, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm constantly editing with the isms, going, okay, what are my beliefs? How can I change it? How can I be better? Can you do that? Can you do that about this? Which is to say, can you edit yourself and learn and grow about this topic? The best way to do that is to seek us out, listen to our stories. That goes for not just attempt survivors, but also lost survivors. On the website, there are 160 stories now, and a lot of us are also lost survivors. We have both experiences. Yeah, we're more than we seem, I think. We're large and we contain multitudes. And that's all I got for you. So thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you, guys. so much. Yeah, we can do a Q&A, or if you want to do the private thing, I can also stick around. It's up to you guys, or both. Yes?
Did you bring t-shirts with you?
No. I have pins, though. I have a couple of pins. I will give them to whoever wants them. I have 3. The t-shirts you can get on the website. I don't keep inventory because I have too many animals and fur gets and things. Yeah, so I avoid that. But yeah, they're on the website. I think there's a link that just says shop. All right, what else? I know someone else has a question.
Actually, I just wanted you to share your comment that you did earlier today about the capability of filtering on your website.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so one of the, I'm gonna try and put this back up. One of the things that I included in the new website when I got the grant was a filter element. So if you, and I did this because I actually had some researchers request it. So if you want to read the story of a trans woman from Philly, you go to the filter area, and it's up on the top of the website, and you click. There are so many different options. It's really intense. You can click trans Philly. That's where they were interviewed, the various life experiences, and if that person who you're hoping for exists, they'll pop up, and then you can go see their stories. So the ways that we have it filtered are gender, sex, race and ethnicity, age at interview, age at attempt, lived experiences, so that's any kind of lived experience, including diagnoses. Are they a loss survivor? Are they a sexual abuse survivor? A mass shooting survivor? Any number of things. And all of those tags are dictated by the people who have been in the project. So that's, I hope that will be really useful in the future. What else? Are we done? We're done. Thank you, guys.
One more round of applause for Dese'Rae. Thank you all so much for coming. Please feel free to hang around for a bit. There's lots of food. Please eat. Please stop by the tables. And please check out the Live Through This exhibit in the gallery. Thank you.